I was fortunate enough to be able to go in the odd time during the construction, and I'd look at this place and look up and see the dome and all the seats tiered up, you know. I thought it was massive.
That was an incredible feat of engineering, the fact they broke ground in June and opened in November. I mean, nobody would believe that would happen today, but it did. And I know Clancy told me once he came over to watch the construction ongoing, and he said, there's no way they'll ever fill this place. I mean, we're used to playing before 7,000, 8,000 people. And he said, I don't think they're ever going to fill it.
But on November 12, 1931, over 13,000 fans proved Clancy wrong and packed this beautiful palace.
Jackson and Conacher are skating out there all ready to go for this historic event where the NHL is starting in Maple Leaf Gardens.
The home team lost 2-1 to Chicago, but it was clear that Toronto was home to a new shrine of hockey. Smythe now had everything he wanted, except for a Stanley Cup. Sensing this first year in the Gardens was pivotal, he made a quick coaching change.
4 or 5 games into the season, Conn Smythe decided that his coach, Art Duncan, wasn't doing the job he wanted, and he said, how'd you like to coach the Toronto Maple Leafs? And my dad said, what's wrong with the Maple Leafs? He said, nothing's wrong with the Maple Leafs, but I'm going to change coaches. So he said, well, think about it. No, he said, I want you here Saturday night if you're going to take the job. My dad arrived in Toronto on the Saturday morning, and Smythe, the idea was that Smythe was going to coach the team that night in a game against Boston. And my dad would observe and then take over the team the next day. Boston's leading 5-1 in the second period. Smythe turns to my dad and said, you can take over now, Dick, and walked away.
Remarkably, Toronto stormed back and won the game 6-5, giving Dick Irvin his first win. It began an unbelievable stretch that would lead them all the way to the finals, and Smythe's old team, the New York Rangers, Conn, would get the last laugh.
We went in and we won the cup. And I'll tell you, I was ecstatic. Even though the Depression was on, that gave us a new life. And this was a hockey town, I'll tell you.
In a few short years, Smythe had indeed made Toronto a hockey town, but it was another man's voice that turned an entire country's attention to the Leafs.
At the time, I was working on CFCA. It was a part-time job. I had finished what I thought my work for the day, and Basil Lake, the radio editor of the Star, came up to me and said, you have another job tonight. You're going to broadcast the hockey game. Apparently they had canvassed the entire sports department, and I was the only one left. So I just went over there and did the game.
That break in 1923 was the beginning of a 49-year career for Foster Hewitt. But it wasn't until he moved to his new home atop Maple Leaf Gardens that a legend was born.
The architect and myself went down on Bay Street, and we found that the best height was on the 5th floor. So we adapted that at the Gardens to that height. They called it the gondola because an advertising man suggested that it was like the gondola of an airship.
His calls from the gondola turned the home team into Canada's team.
I think Foster Hewitt, the golden voice of hockey, that he's the guy that really put hockey on the map, especially the Maple Leafs.
Foster Hewitt's broadcast, everyone in the city and the country followed the Leafs devoutly.
Score 3-2 for the Toronto Maple Leafs. When the face-off, the Leafs shoot the puck wide of the Canadian net.
My dad coached the Leafs. A couple of times they would go, after the season was over, on what they call barnstorming trips out west. And Foster went on the trips. When it came to the players on the platforms and the railway stations and the autograph seekers there, he was first and foremost. It was Foster Hewitt.
I remember getting a blackboard at Christmas one year, and never mind subtracting and adding and numbers and that. I drew 2 goal nets, you know, and started to move it, and then I would clean the chalk off and pretend it was the ice. So my imagination got carried away with Foster Hewitt.
Listen to Foster Hewitt, Maple Leaf Garden, the gondola at Maple Leaf Garden. That was just like a religion, and we'd never miss that.
Forward pass, goes loose. It's right in front of the goal.
Not only were future players impacted by Foster, but announcers as well.
I gotta find out where Foster Hewitt's radio station is, and maybe he's there, and maybe I could meet him. He was there, and I did meet him, and we talked for an hour or more. And he listened to a tape I had with me. And he didn't exactly suggest I find another profession, but he was very nice. He pointed out different things and asked me to stay in touch. And he gave me some things to think about. Foster Hewitt was, well, the man.
He shoots, he scores!
10 men whose names appear on the most coveted trophy in sport are here at Maple Leaf Gardens this evening. Pete Langell is here this evening. So is Harry Watson, Gay Stewart, Donnie Metz, Elwin Morris, Cal Gardner, Bill Jusda.
Toronto's thirst for another sip from the Stanley Cup was growing. The Maple Leafs had 6 fruitless trips to the finals after the triumph of 1932. And in 1942, they looked to change their fortunes. With Captain Syl Apps leading the way and a blossoming star in Walter Turk Broda in goal, the Leafs again found themselves playing for the Cup against Detroit. But after 3 games, it seemed Toronto was destined to lose again.
No one could believe that the Leafs were about to get swept.
Before that game, Hap Day benched star right winger Gordie Drillin and his big defenseman Bucko McDonald, and he inserted a little bit more speed.
In came winger Don Metz and defenseman Ernie Dickens, but perhaps Day's most important piece of coaching happened before his team took the ice.
This little girl at a Toronto school wrote a letter to Coach Happy Day, more or less saying, you know, I'm just so distraught and I can't believe you guys are going to lose tonight, you know, and pleading with the coach and with the players to win one for her, for all of the young loyal fans.
So he read the letter to all the players, and this just got I think the adrenaline flowing. And as the team was going out on the ice, and Sweeney Schreiner turned around to my dad, he says, "Don't worry, Coach, we're going to win this."
Day pushed all the right buttons. Metz scored the game winner in Game 4, and he added a hat trick in Game 5. Broda, who had surrendered 12 goals in the first 3 games, yielded just 7 goals over the final 4. And behind the 2-goal performance of Sweeney Schreiner, the Leafs became the first team in sports to overcome a 3-0 deficit to win a championship. Unrest had fallen upon the world as the 40s unfolded. World War II had erupted. No one was immune to its effects. Conn Smythe, a decorated hero of World War I, would not stand idly by.
Smythe valued loyalty more than anything else, and he valued loyalty in 3 ways: to King, to country, and to the Toronto Maple Leafs, and in that order. So when it came time for war, he was the first to enlist.
The war stripped many teams of their stars, and the Leafs were hit hard. Players such as Apps, Broda, and Gay Stewart turned in their skates for battle fatigues, and Smythe was loyal to those who served.
He promised any player on his team, at least, who would enlist, that they would be given a fair shot to make the team upon being discharged. So that there was a sense of give and take and a sense of loyalty, so that if you enlisted, your career would not be jeopardized.
Ironically, Smythe's role in the war played a large part in one of the Leafs' most important acquisitions, that of Ted Teeter Kennedy. Smythe left Frank Selke in charge of the team with strict instructions that no moves were to be made without his approval. However, Selke was offered Kennedy in a trade. Selke, enamored with Kennedy's talents, made the deal. Smythe was fuming when he learned of the trade, but time proved Selke right.
Conn Smythe said he's the #1 Leaf player of all time. Kennedy was a great leader, great offensive player, made the players around him much better.
Teeter seemed to epitomize to me as a youngster all that was good about the game of hockey. I think Teeter has been, to those who go that far back, has been one of the greatest Leafs ever. It's everything you'd want someone to be in a hockey player as a person.
Toronto's love affair with Kennedy developed in 1945 as the highest scoring forward led his war-depleted team into battle with the regular season